Boom. Okay, welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, we got a show for you today. We do. We're having a debate, gang. I know you guys love that. Yesterday was very much a hug circle, right? Okay, everyone was so polite, so nice, so, good faith. Today, well, I hope we're all still good faith, right? But it's going to be a little more contentious here. As soon as Buckaroo gets here, we'll throw her in. But I wanted to make sure we went live on time, right? Because I believe in being on time, and I believe in, respecting my audience. So, gang, thanks for showing up. Thank you, Zephyr Hash. Nice to see you. Conserve liberalism, always a pleasure. Deadly Zebra. Hello. Tessie Johnson. Justin Freakin, Wayne's Brain, Silver in Hand. Wow, look at all of you. I know you're all so excited. All my YouTubers, all my Twitchers, okay? For those of you on Kick, welcome as well. Gang, we got some great content coming up. I'm just killing time till she gets here, gang. That's what I'm doing, okay? We got some great content coming up. This is the last show this week, but next week we have some bangers, okay? We are going to have Pisco on Monday to debate Admiral Gibbs, right? And Pentuple and a couple others, right? We're going to have Nina on that same day. Oh, thank God. Okay, great. We're all here. Excellent. I don't have to kill time anymore. How you doing, Buckaroo?
Pretty all right. How are you?
Oh, we're good. We're live, by the way. I know we have this thing where every time you come on, we say our favorite slurs to each other, but we're live right now, so we can't do it this time.
Oh, damn it. That's like my best warm-up.
I know. Got to get it out of your system before the debate.
Okay, give me like 2 seconds.
Yep. And gang, if you're watching this and you're loving it, and you want to have a question for either of these two lovely ladies, just throw a super chat my way, and I'll read it and try to get to your question as the format allows for. I won't be interrupting a robust back and forth to ask your question, but during the pauses, during the breaks, at the top of the hour, things like that, we'll ask the questions. So yeah.
Let's chat. Give him money.
True.
All right, I got a little dressed up for this as well.
Oh, fancy! Look.
Hey, there we go. I'm even wearing a skirt and everything. Thank you. And I also got myself beautiful adornments.
Oh, wonderful.
Respect the conversation. I just had to,
Okay. So, gang, tonight we're going to be talking about Christian nationalism. I was talking to Abby about what she wanted to debate, and this is one of the things that she brought up. So I guess to start, what we're going to do is we're going to pass the mic to Abby, and with just a real simple question, what is Christian nationalism, and why do you think it should, why do you advocate for it? And then we'll just start from there, and we'll let Buckaroo respond. So also make sure to tell people who you are as you're talking about this. So go ahead. Mike's yours, Abby. Take us away. Let's go.
Hey, I'm Abers. You can find me on Twitter at Abers09. You can find me on Twitch at Abers Unleashed. And, we were talking a little bit about, hey, what's your strongest view? And I said, I think my strongest view is that I'm pretty much a Christian nationalist, Christian populist, right? And the way I look at that is that America was founded on Christian values. That's why they came on the Mayflower. It's literally in the Mayflower Compact that they did it for God and glory. So it's in the Declaration of Independence multiple times. They reference our creator. It's why we have certain rights endowed by a creator. And I think that we should return more to those values than we're seeing the country go in a direction today. The direction we're kind of going is a little bit away from Christian values and a little bit more towards individualism, and just as long as you're not hurting anybody, you can do whatever you want. And I think physical harm and actual harm to a society in general are two different things. So I look forward to having a discussion about, America's founding and how it was founded on Christianity. As John Adams said, it was founded for moral and religious people, and it's wholly inadequate for those who are not.
Okay. Buckaroo. What do you think? Tell people who you are as you respond, by the way.
I am Big Papa Buckaroo. I do not believe that we live in a Christian nation, and I don't think we should. I actually love having the freedom to believe in whatever I want to believe in, as long as I'm following the law. I think that's why you see in the Constitution, they aren't saying, you have to be religious. In fact, there are rules specifically refusing tests for the faith of any individual. I think Christianity in America is pretty broken apart. I think there are a lot of different sects. There are 45,000 sects across the world. There are 6 different, main groups of Christianity, and we see a great variety across the nation. I think that isn't going to unify every single Christian to be a part of the same voting bloc, and I don't think it should.
Okay, I guess my first question for discussion, right, is when this is to you, Abby, right? When you say Christian nationalism and that we should move more towards Christian nationalism, you recognize that not everyone in the nation is Christian. Are you advocating that they have less rights, less votes? How does this work in practice in your ideal system? What you would advocate for?
I will say I do actually have a list of questions I would also like to ask.
Oh, we'll get to it as soon as we get to
when
mine.
we get to it. Yeah,
no problem. No problem. Go ahead, Abby.
To answer your question in short, no, right? So no, I'm not advocating for outlawing religions other than Christianity. That's not what America was founded on. America was founded on, we're not going to declare there is one state religion, but we're also not going to interfere in people's religion, right? It was more about, we're not going to align ourselves with one specific church, with one specific religion. But if you look at what we were originally, which was a collection of states, a collection of independent states, they had their own, constitutions in these states and their own things, right? All of the original colonies had a declaration of faith to be able to serve in government. That was a thing that they were founded on. Now we've moved away from that over time, and we can say some things moving away from are okay, but the foundation is there. And that foundation is something that all Christians agree on. Things such as, common law. Common law and Blackstone specifically was heavily influential when it came to the way our judicial system works. The idea of treating the rich and the poor justly and the same is a biblical idea. So those types of things in a foundation of America should be still the foundation.
Is that to imply that there's no other way to have a just America without Christianity? Are there no other religions that reinforce justice in some regard?
That's not what we're saying at all. What we're talking about is the foundation it was built on, right? It wasn't built on other religions. It was built on the foundation of Christianity, on biblical truths and biblical moral values.
I would argue that a lot of the people were informed by their religious beliefs, but I do think there is reason to believe they wanted there to be a separation of church and state, considering they have it in the Constitution. There is freedom of speech, the First Amendment, freedom of speech. You get to have whatever religious affiliation you choose. We also have, our right to due process. What is it? The 14th Amendment. This has been reinforced, as recently as 2005, I know off the top of my head, off the top of my head, off of research, but that implies that the Constitution has to be applied. The first 10 have to be applied to every single state, that states can't, deny, revoke people's first 10 rights just because of, or for any reason, really. And this includes religion. So I would argue that even if people, like individuals, have been informed by their religious belief, that doesn't mean that it's founded in religion itself.
Our current
There's
law, a lot of our current law is founded in biblical ideas, right? So
Well,
take it
when you're
from
talking
the
about things like
personal
morality,
just
morality,
real quick, let her
morality in
finish. Let Abby
general.
finish, and then you can respond. Go ahead, Abby.
So morality in general is founded in biblical truth. And without morality, it boils down to preference. If the whole of the United States band together tomorrow and decided that a 45-year-old dad and a 19-year-old daughter, it was okay for them to get married, that wouldn't make it okay in my worldview, right? Because we have divine command that tells us that's not okay. So how can you justify that not being okay in your worldview without divine command?
logic and reason. I think oftentimes when parents are in a relationship with their child, it's a direct result of abuse, of grooming, and
How did we
therefore
get here?
they're participating in an illegal act to permit that relationship in the first place. I think people who are being forced under their will or through coercion into any sort of relationship, that is wrong, because not only is it bad for the health of the individual in the relationship, it's not socially adequate either. It's not, it's hard to have. Have you ever had friends who are in unhealthy relationships? It doesn't really suggest a good social dynamic. I think it's bad for society at large, and it's bad for the individual.
But that's not a moral argument, that's a preference. You're saying we prefer it that
Yeah,
way.
that's a logical argument that I think goes to support exactly the same morality that you're supporting. It's just not driven by a belief in God.
So if they're
It's
two
driven.
consenting adults, they're both adults, they're both
Mhm,
consenting,
mhm.
would that be illegal?
I mean, I already explained why I think that should probably be illegal, because I think it's usually produced out of unhealthy relationships, unhealthy relationship dynamics between a parent and a child.
But this one isn't. This is totally consenting. She's 100% all for it. Like, I found out this person was my dad. Now I'm in love with them and we want to get married.
Then
So
I don't really
if
care, as
the
long as
whole
they're
of
not harming anybody
society
else,
banded,
and they're not, as long as they're not harming anybody else and they're not reproducing, then I don't really see how that is my business, or why government should have any say in what they should be doing.
so you're saying though that you would want them to be forcibly sterile? Because how could you force them to not reproduce? You said as long as they're not reproducing. How could you prevent that from happening? And why would you prevent that from happening? Why would it be
I would
wrong for
prevent
them
that
to
from
reproduce?
happening because I think when you have people who have like very similar genetics reproducing after, I think, like two generations, you often start to see really deleterious effects on their genetics, because they're going to be more likely to get a lot of inheritable diseases, and that's just harmful. Again, once again, harmful for society and harmful for the individuals through
But
logic
if
and reasoning.
society band together tomorrow and decided, you know what, we actually don't have a problem with that. That's cool. You guys can do whatever you want. You would just have to be
Well,
okay
it's
with that.
still.
Because your whole basis is society has agreed that this is not okay. Society has agreed this is
No,
harmful
I didn't say
towards
society has
society.
agreed. I said what I think would be harmful towards society and harmful for the individual. And I also stated I think there are specific reasons why it would be harmful for the individuals and for society that aren't just based on that's how we like it.
So then but that's just your preference. That's just your specific preference now, not even society's preference. It's your specific preference. Why should everyone do what Buckaroo says we should do? What's your
I mean, why should everybody
justification?
do what you say God says we should do? Why should
It's not
anybody
what
do what
I
any
say God says we
individual
should do.
reports to believe in? Like, any individual can say, I believe in God, God told me to do this, now everybody should do this because God said it. But how am I supposed to trust any individual that's reporting the word of God? God didn't talk to me. I don't know what God
Because
wants.
it's more about the foundation of society. It's the foundation that our current society was built on. So if it's the foundation of what our current society is built on, that's what kind of got us here, and now we're going down back the other direction. In the 50s, it was the
I mean, there were lots of things that our society was founded on that I would argue are good that we don't have now, like including the slaves that were owned by a lot of the founding fathers. You know, I don't think slavery is good. I think slavery is bad, despite the fact that it's had, you know, a pretty strong history in America. So I don't think just because we've been founded in something or something's been like interwoven in our history that it means it's good or right or that we should continue it.
loving others, loving your neighbor, that's literally a biblical idea. That's
I mean,
the idea of all humans should be loved. So that's literally the idea that
unless
born
it's a father and
slavery
a
is
daughter.
wrong.
Joke. Sorry.
Well,
Um,
yes, because and
I
it,
mean,
it
I mean,
I
explicitly states
do
I
want
that
to
agree.
in the
hold on
Bible.
just real quick. I do
I
want to
agree.
hold on
Slavery
just real quick.
should be
Just real
considered
quick.
anti-Christian.
Just real quick. I do want to move away from the incest debate. I was not prepared for an incest debate today.
Yeah.
Maybe another day, right? But for now,
Yeah.
let's
I mean,
let's re-rail away from the incest hypotheticals. That was probably a new record for them, by the way. But here we are. Yeah. Did you said
I agree.
you had some questions for her? So before I ask
I do.
more, if you want to kind of start, and also Abby, if you have any questions for Buckaroo that you want to ask, by all means. But let's start with Buckaroo. Buckaroo, you said you had some questions. Let's start
I
there.
do.
Go ahead.
And so my question does actually lean a bit into it. You know, I agree that, or my answer does. I agree that loving one another and slavery don't go hand in hand. That typically, when you love someone, you don't enslave them. Um, now, you're saying that loving one another and respecting one another are core values of Christianity. Um, I have tenets right here of another temple, tenets of the Satanic Temple. And the first tenet is one should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. I would argue that there are probably tenets in literally every religion that have some sort of rule about loving other people. So why is it that Christianity is the necessary religion for America as opposed to any other religion that it doesn't have as sordid a history in the country?
Do you think do you think that the Church of Satan would exist without Christianity and biblical ideas?
Uh, do you understand my question? I was
Yes,
asking
I
if
do.
empathy exists outside of Christianity, and if Christianity necessitates, like, it, if this is necessitated by Christianity, are there other religions that have the same level of empathy? And if so, why is it that we need Christianity as opposed to those other religions?
So I personally believe no, there's not. And it's specifically because Christianity, and this is where a lot of people make a mistake. Christianity, Jesus came to fulfill the Old Testament. So, and then he preached love. He preached loving one another, forgiveness, repentance, right? That's kind of where he stepped in. You don't find those same things in other religions. You just don't.
You don't
That was a
find love
unique
in other
thing.
religions?
No, no. Preaching a level of acceptance even towards your enemy. The idea that you could be tortured to death, right? And hang on the cross and your last thing to say, forgive them because they don't know what they do. That's another level of forgiving an enemy that you don't see in other, if we're talking Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic religions.
People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. That would be tenet 6 of the Satanic Temple, that also implies some sort of forgiveness and understanding to others. Along with the first tenet, I would argue supports exactly what you're talking about, that you should be empathetic towards others and that you should be understanding towards people, even your enemies, because people are fallible at the end of the day.
So you're making the argument that the Satanic Temple was not influenced by Christianity at all? Because I would make
No,
the
I'm making
argument
the
that the
argument that the
Satanic
Satanic
Temple and
Temple
its
has
beliefs,
tenets.
excuse me, I would make the argument that the Satanic Temple and its beliefs wouldn't even exist without Christianity. So it also is foundationally built in with the Bible. It just wouldn't even exist. The idea of it wouldn't exist.
I'm not saying it can't be influenced by Christianity, but I'm also going to
No, it's
say that I
the
can't see into
entire
other
idea is built
timelines.
on it.
I can't see into other timelines. I can't see what would or would not have existed if Christianity hadn't existed. I'm sure there would be thousands of lives, millions of lives that weren't lost to Christians. So maybe those would still exist if it weren't for
You could
Christianity. But
make that
otherwise,
argument. You
I
could
would
make that
say
argument for any religion, including non-religion.
I don't think you could make that argument for the Satanic Temple, which is why I brought this handy dandy decor with
This
me.
The
Because
Satanic Temple wouldn't even exist without Christianity. The
Okay.
entire idea of Satan is there because of Christianity and because of the Abrahamic religions in general, right?
I'm still. Excuse me
I
for.
do have, yes.
But I'm confused, and I need some clarity, and my audience is asking for clarity. What changes do you want to make, Abby? Right? Like so far, all you've said is, or what I've heard you say is, we should be more Christian as a nation. Again, what laws, what regulations, what changes in the legal code, in the judicial code, in society, and how we vote, anything, what specific changes are you advocating for?
I think one specific change would be encouraging family values, encouraging people to have more children. So, for instance, we could pass tax code that says, women or couples that have 3 or more children get certain levels of tax breaks or don't pay taxes at all. That would be a good step
Well,
to
we do have
encouraging
child tax
more family
credits,
values.
right? That
Yeah, but like
exists.
not paying taxes at all over a certain number of kids. Right
So
now,
like
we
Elon
heavily
Musk, for
incentivize single
example, wouldn't
motherhood.
have to pay any. So if Elon Musk was a woman, she wouldn't have to pay any taxes because of the amount of children that he has. I mean, I feel like
Yes.
just the argument that having a bunch of children means you don't pay taxes is
Well, you're contributing to the
what's
future
happening
of the
there.
nation. You're contributing to the future of the nation because
And
currently we are below replacement value as a population. We're not reproducing in order to even replace ourselves.
are we running out of workers?
That it's a downward slope, and it has been. So we will, if we continue
I
on
thought
the
there were
path,
workers
we'll
from
get
other
worse.
countries that were constantly being
That's
shipped in. Are
that's
we
why
really
we're
running out of
importing
workers? Or are we
them.
just running out of workers that are upholding our American
We're
Christian
running out of
values that we want to keep
Americans
strong?
is the problem. As Americans, we're on a
Mm.
downward slope when it comes to population decline. We're in a
I mean, isn't
population
it isn't
decline
it
and we're
true? What
not
is it like?
reproducing
One
at
in six, one in
replacement
nine
value.
Americans are from another country already. So I feel like the average American, you know, maybe not the average
So
American isn't from here,
your
but the average
solution
American is like within 2 generations of not being from here.
your solution to noticeable, demonstrable population decline is to ship in people from other nations to do basically slave labor, work for
No, I
slave
don't care
wages.
about the decline that much. I don't care about the current decline. I also didn't actually say we should have people working slave wages. That's something you brought up on your own. I just said there are workers that come from other countries. Um, no, I don't care. I don't think it's like an actual serious issue that's like ruining America right now. I think it's something that Christians have an issue with primarily.
You don't think that would be a
I do. I
to consistently be below replacement value?
um I
Replacement
mean,
versus
if we start seeing a like a damaging effect on America's economy, on the health of the average American and the happiness of the average American, then I would be willing to reassess that. I don't see that. I haven't seen any reports that say
isn't
this,
isn't
so I'm not
mental
worried.
health isn't the mental health of Americans like at an all-time low? Like people are struggling with mental health now more than they ever have, especially
Do you think
women.
that's the placement rate?
I think it has to do with us moving away from family values, right? We're encouraging women to do it all. You can do it. You can have the career. You can be the single mom. You can do it all by yourself. You don't need the
Did
man. And it's much better to have a family unit of some kind to be fulfilled, to raise children, to create the next generation of Americans. rather than just shipping people in, as you were saying, like, well, aren't we just importing people from all over? We're just going to ship people in to do the labor for us. That doesn't seem
We are.
morally or
We quite
ethically
literally
correct
are
to me.
already doing that.
No, we're quite literally shipping them out now
Well, we're going to ship
at
them back
historic
in.
rates.
Let's not be confused about America's history, okay? We ship them out, we ship them back in. We ship them out, we ship them back in. That's kind of the cute little relationship that we have going on with the rest of America. I have a question. So, do we agree that America was founded on the Constitution?
On the Constitution. America wasn't necessarily founded on the Constitution. If you want to go back to like founding of America and ideals, I'd say the Mayflower would probably be where America, the idea of America was thought up and founded.
So, do you think the Constitution plays any part in the foundation of
Oh, of course
America?
it does. And so does the Declaration of Independence, by the way. I think the Declaration of Independence would be our break from England.
Buckaroo, you there? You're having some tech issues. Uh-oh. God struck her down. You still there?
What just
You still with
happened?
us? If you said anything, we
I
can't hear
am.
you.
I don't know why it's.
You froze up. We can't hear you. Okay. Give it a second. You're back, I think.
I think I might be back.
Yeah,
I think you're
welcome
back.
I don't know what's
Okay.
happening.
Did you hear what she asked you?
No, not at all.
Okay, repeat your question, Abby, please. Or
I
your
said
statement.
the Declaration of Independence would probably be where we broke from England and determined we were going to be a sovereign nation.
Okay. Do you agree with the Bill of Rights? And sorry, I have a list of questions, so I'm trying to get through them before we go too crazy. Do we agree with the Bill of Rights and the amendments it sets forth?
Of course.
Okay, wonderful. Do we agree that a government is of the people?
Is this my tech or hers?
I think it's hers.
I don't know what's happening right now.
Yeah, this is unfortunate.
No, this is so bizarre.
You keep breaking up, Buckaroo. I think you're back now, but let's give it another try. Yeah, go ahead. Ask your question again. You just finished the Bill of Rights. What was your next? Oh no.
Govern people by the people for the people.
Oh, there she went.
Wonderful. Okay, gang. 1 second. Let me see if we can get her back. You there?
Here.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's happening.
I hate to do this, but let's try without Cam for a minute. Maybe that'll help.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, so do we agree the government is of the people, by the people, for the people?
The way it's constructed, as long as it's in a line with the way our government is set up, is the way our government's set up currently. I don't have issues with the way the Constitution's currently set up, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. So when it comes to of the people, by the people, for the people, do you know, at least based on latest polls, how many Americans consider themselves Christian? The percentage of Americans?
65%.
About 65%. So a little over half. It would be reasonable to impose Christianity on a legislative level when only just over half of Americans actually agree with Christianity's values.
But I've not claimed to impose Christianity at a state level. I've not once claimed that. Not to say everyone must be a Christian.
Right. This is why we brought up specific legislation that you might want to impose, like the tax tax credit that you wanted to give to mothers, which would be
that everyone had to be Christian.
Okay, but it would be imposing Christianity in some regard on a legislative level. Is there?
No, how would that be? I mean, specifically imposing Christianity. That could benefit numerous people. I mean,
It can
if there was
benefit
a
numerous
single
people, but I
mother,
thought you
say
were
for
just
instance,
talking
you
about
have
how you
4
were
children,
implementing Christian law, how this
say
would be
you have
implementing some sort of Christian values legislatively.
So I said it would encourage family values, which is an ultimately a Christian foundation, but I mean, it would benefit everyone equally. It would benefit single
So
mothers specifically. So say for instance, you have 4 children, your husband's abusing you, you could feel it would be a lot easier for you to leave knowing you don't have to worry about taxes. Whatever money you have to now make as a single mother, you can go out, you can make that, your taxes are yours, it's no problem.
so
If the
this
American
wouldn't
media
be
didn't
implementing.
portray that person.
Okay, so if it benefits more than just Christians, is the same true for all other laws in America? If it's benefiting other people, then it's not inherently Christian?
No, no, that's not what I'm saying, but a lot of Christian, beliefs and values inherently benefit the public and benefit society. That's been true for eons. I mean, we can talk about the '50s if you'd like. The '50s was one of the most economically successful times in America, and it was also 90% Christian.
Do you think that's
I think it's
causal,
because we
that
had a
being
cohesive
90%
culture.
Christian inherently
No.
produces the best economic times?
No, I think it was specifically because we had a cohesive culture, and we had a cohesive culture that's built on the foundation of love and respect towards one another, right? And
Did
it
we
and we
not
had a
establish that in
strong
America
attendance.
without Christianity?
It was the strongest attendance of church in America's history, so you had much stronger individual, smaller communities that were much willing to help people in economic hardship, whereas now we rely on the government to help people that are in economic hardship.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but a lot of what you're explaining, like these aren't inherent to only Christianity. You're talking about the benefits that some aspects of Christian communities has on people, but you're not really talking about how this is necessarily Christian. We can have
So
communities that exist without Christianity. There are community centers. There are schools. There are tons of third places where people convene and can establish a community that's separate from Christianity.
do you
I
have
mean,
a
look at
specific
literally every.
example of people establishing a community that's not based on Christian values at all?
Yeah, like every gay neighborhood I've ever been in. I gotta
There's
say, strongest
no
community
Christian
vibes I've
values
ever
whatsoever?
experienced. Community gardens, I mean, I don't think they're driven by Christianity. I think they're driven by the fact that humans are social creatures that are prone to uh, interact with one another and support one another.
You notice how I keep saying Christian values, right? So it's more about the underlying values that drive the community, not
Not the
necessarily the label
Christianity
they
itself.
put on themselves, right? It's the
So
values that are
Christianity
inherently
isn't actually
born out
necessary
of
after all.
Christianity. There are values that are inherently born out of Christianity. I specifically mentioned like our judicial system. The idea that you will have the same justice for rich people and for poor people, that idea that you will be just towards the rich and the poor in the same way is a biblical value, right? And it's literally born into the very fiber of our legal system. And we should return to that instead of judges deciding to go easy on people that they're friends with or vice versa. And I'm sure that's something we could probably agree on.
I mean, I agree that we should have just law. I wouldn't agree that all concepts of justice can be historically uh, drawn back solely to Christianity.
Okay.
That wasn't my claim.
Okay. Maybe we will need to kind of get back on track here a little bit. I think we're circling the drain
That would be
just a
great.
tad. Um.
Mhm.
So,
I actually have.
do you have more questions?
Oh, I have a lot of
Okay.
questions.
Well, before you get to them, I do want to ask some of my own because I want to maybe just kind of get this because it everything that you're saying, Abby, is very vague to me. The most concrete thing that you've said was about the child tax credit. So, in Christian values, it is not okay. Homosexual marriage is not okay. Under a Christian nationalism, would homosexual marriage be legal?
I think the Supreme Court's already ruled on homosexual
They
marriage,
ruled on
and I don't
abortion.
think
They
go
took
back.
away abortion. What about
That's not
homosexual
true.
marriage?
They didn't take away abortion. They sent the issue back to the states. They didn't rule for it or against it. They didn't make a ruling on it.
Okay,
And
but
I think with homosexual marriage, they made a concrete ruling that homosexuals should be allowed to get
on a
married.
federal
So
level,
I
yes, that
don't
it would be
see that.
illegal to
Correct.
forbid them. So you would, in Christian nationalism, you would take that federal protection away and kick it back to the states, much like in the abortion?
I don't think that you could. I think there are judicial laws, there are judicial things put in place to prevent something like that from happening. I'm talking, but Christian nationalism on a social level, more incentivizing people to have a more Christian social nature, right? Not talking about striking down other people, because I personally don't believe that's a Christian value to go smite others. Now, that's an Old Testament value, but I don't believe that's necessarily a Christian value.
I'm not asking about smiting others, though. I'm asking about simply recognizing as a state, which again, I forget the name of the decision which did it. Obergefell, perhaps. I could be wrong. Don't quote me, gang. But which federally recognized marriages between men and women and women, right? So again, under the Christian framework, even in the New Testament, they do not recognize marriages between men and women.
And
So,
churches are still free to do that.
okay, I understand, but I'm talking about federal protections. Like when you get married, it comes with certain protections on the federal level,
Mhm.
right? You have certain rights that I blanking can't enumerate on them, but you understand, right? You have there are certain legal protections that married couples get. They get tax credits, all these things, visitation rights, etc., and hospital visits. You can't be forced to testify against your spouse. All these protections, right? So again, I'm just asking, under Christian nationalism, which again, I'm just, I guess the reason I'm asking all this is because it sounds like you're just advocating for people to be nice to each other, and fair enough, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference? What are we
No,
advocating for here?
I
Be
think
specific.
it's less about repealing laws that have already been put in place and more about putting in place, like I was talking about, like putting in tax credits that would incentivize couples to stay together and to have children, right? And to raise those children. I I don't reconcile a difference in my head. Someone getting married at a federal level means nothing to me. Two people signing a piece of paper is not the same as a Christian marriage. It's not the same as in a Muslim marriage. It's not the same as a religious marriage at all. So I can delineate a difference between those two things and not see a problem reconciling it. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
I'm just asking, like again, for specific national
The
legal
government
changes.
saying that two people can have a tax credit because they live together is not the same thing as marriage in the way Christians understand it.
Fair. So you would again be okay or advocate for Obergefell being overturned, which can happen, right? They've overturned legal cases before. And
But
Obergefell, to
that's
be clear, is a ruling that forces basically federal recognition of marriage specifically, not just tax credits, between men and women and women. That's all I'm asking.
I personally believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. I wouldn't have an issue with them doing that. I know there's a lot of people that would, but I don't believe that 65% of America would have a problem with them doing that.
Back to you, Buckaroo.
Now, I think there's also a world in which they can delineate between the two and everyone could be happy, which is what I personally would advocate for, right? That there's two different things in play whenever it comes to homosexual marriage. There's marriage between a man and a woman, more of a religious marriage, and then there's a government contract that can be signed that says we are going to pool our resources together, and because of that, we get certain rights towards one another as property, right? Two consenting adults saying, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do." I don't think that it's biblical, right? I don't think it's Christian. I don't think it necessitates the future generation, and I don't think we should be encouraging it, but I also don't think we should be hanging people either.
I mean, nobody's thinking you're suggesting we start hanging people, but it did sound a bit there like you were implying if you could revoke the law, you would. Is like, where do you actually stand on it? Because you were saying no, I wouldn't, but then afterwards it sounded like you were talking about how you wouldn't be against removing, having gay marriages occur only.
I don't think the government should be involved in marriage at all between man and woman, man and man, woman and woman. I think marriage should be done as a religious thing, which is what it always was, and I don't think the government should care one way or another whether you're married or not. Personally, I think it should be more about incentivizing certain American culture. And I think what we've done is we've gotten away from the culture that made America so successful in the 50s. That unified vision, that unified culture, and more of a community. We see now that more and more people stay in their homes and don't even know who their neighbors are. Those are the things.
I mean, couldn't this be resolved by just going and knocking on your neighbor's door? Putting up a bunch of signs, meet your neighbors.
My point is, what's the incentive?
What's the incentive? I mean,
that's not what is the incentive at the moment? The incentive now is to do whatever you want as long as you do it in the comfort of your own home and people stay in their homes. Right? We've gotten so divided.
I mean, I wouldn't agree. I wouldn't agree with that completely. I can't murder somebody in my home.
People don't interact anymore. They just don't. We're too divided on things, and people have this view that if you have a difference of opinion, you can't talk to one another. So I think that's another thing that we should move away from.
What are some other ways that you would reinforce Christianity that aren't just social, that are legislative or federal?
I think tax cuts is a great way. That's a great way to incentivize returning to.
Are there any other?
Right. I think also returning to less welfare programs so that people stop looking at the government as providing for them and start returning to communities, right? And community sources.
So we want to help one another, but only if it's from somebody down the street, not if it's from somebody who's pulled their money on a national level so that we can help more people.
Forcibly pulled their money on a national level. Not at will, forcibly.
I mean,
right?
Do you think, do you think just giving tax credits or getting rid of welfare? Girl, I understand. Do you think getting rid of taxes?
I don't. Hold on. Are you advocating for getting rid of taxes?
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should get rid of taxes.
And okay, so you don't. Okay. So you're okay.
I think the government.
Why do we even talk about tax credits if we should just get rid of taxes across the board?
Great. If we could do that, right? I think that's kind of where we're heading.
Girl, you're going to have to start talking about what you would do if you could do it. I want to hear what you would do if you could do it. I don't want to hear what you think is possible. There we go. I want to hear some strong positions. There we go.
I think taxation is theft.
Okay. What else do you think? No, none of this if we could do it nonsense. I mean, obviously don't go crazy. Like, I'm not trying to start a murder, any sort of like murder pact or anything.
For sure.
But what else would you want to implement on a legislative or federal level in accordance with your religious beliefs?
I would want to return to the values that are stated.
No. What would you want to implement? Okay, I want some hard rules. Okay, return to the values. That's vague.
They're already there. It's just returning to them and championing them instead of talking about like how awful and horrible and ridiculous it is, and we should get rid of these things and we should get rid of those things. And I think what we
Like
should do is
taxes.
return to a foundation. Taxes are relatively new. They're not, I'm talking about returning to constitutional values. Taxes, the
Right.
way we know
But
them now,
so
are
there's
relatively new.
so the reason I'm asking for more concrete answers is because, you know, I
Render
understand
unto Caesar,
the
gang.
essence of moving to
This is
the
bothering me.
values of, the foundation of America, but I don't really understand how that would practically play out. You say you don't want taxes. That is like a practical answer to my question, like, what should we do with America? You say, get rid of all the taxes. That's an answer. But what should we do to America? We should have different feelings. Like, that's not really telling me what would change, except that, like, we would have a different vibe. Does that make sense to you?
It's aligning to a different culture. What we've done as a nation is we've championed the loudest voices and not necessarily the right voices. Does that make
I
sense?
I mean, our vice president was raised as an evangelical. Our president was raised as an evangelical. A lot of the people in the cabinet were raised as evangelicals. They're some of the loudest voices in the nation. So I'm not sure I would agree inherently that that we don't have Christians screaming from the top of their lungs.
I would agree that now we do. I would agree that now we do in this administration that we do, but that's not been the culture for the past, say, 10 to 20 years.
Just real quick.
Since
We haven't
really the
had a Christian.
2000s.
Hasn't every president been Christian? Literally
No,
every president been Christian
saying
and been
so and then
basically
putting
on
your money
paper
where
the
your
leader
mouth
of the
is
free
not the
world.
same thing. That's not the same thing. Joe Biden claiming to be Catholic and then championing abortion is not, that's not the same. That's not the same. Those two things can't compute.
Right. So I would like to go back to the previous questions because now I feel like you're feeling a little more confident in saying what you think we should do with your chest. I respect that. I respect being upfront and direct about your opinions. Um, do you think Christianity as a religion, do you think it should be the national religion? Do you think
No.
do you think we should be implementing it in schools? Do you think we should have other uh, other forms of legislation to reinforce Christianity on a social level? Like, let's get into the weeds a little bit on
I
what you
don't
would
think we
want
should
to
have
change.
laws for or against, if that makes sense. All of this not for, but also not against. If a child wishes to pray at school, they should be allowed to do that, right?
Which I believe they
If
are, to be
a
clear. I believe
school
that is totally fine in school if a child
if
wishes to
a
pray,
school
they are allowed to
decides
play.
if a school comes together and decides as a community that the schools in our community, we want them to pray every day before school, I think they should have the right to choose that. Right? Currently, they don't.
Well, I guess to me, the difference there is that you're talking about a child, an individual that can act upon their own will to a certain extent, versus a school, which is an establishment that can impose certain rules upon children. I mean, upon what is easily the most like vulnerable community. So I would say those are different when it comes to the application. I think personally that children deserve the ability to pray in school. If a child says, I'm going to go pray right now, like, what am I going to do about it? That's, their own beliefs. But if a teacher says, all right, class, you're all going to pray, those are two very different experiences. One of them is an individual acting upon their own desires and their own will, and the other is an individual imposing their beliefs and their desires on a group of other people.
No, well, and when you look at it this way, it's majority of the American public is Christian, correct? At 65%, that's a majority.
Just over. And that's just
Okay.
Christian. That's not even
So should
talking
we
about the
say
different
we're not doing that at
denominations.
all? Correct. So hold on. So if we say, okay, we can't have all children, this entire school district has decided we're going to pray before we're going to say the national anthem and then pray. That's just what we're going to do in our district. You're saying that It's totally fine to say, nope, even though everyone agrees, the parents agree, they want to do this. They don't have the right to do that at the moment, right? You can't do that in a public school. But I also believe in school choice, so there's that. So I'm talking about this within the context of school choice. If you don't want to go to school there, you can choose to go to a different school.
If every individual truly wants to do it, and I've already stated that I believe that individuals have the right to act upon their own will in this manner, then they can still do it. Even if they all decide to do it at the same exact time, in the same exact place, well, maybe not exact, that would be breaking the laws of physics, but, in the relative same area, then they could still do it based on what I explained to be at least my position, which is that a child has the right to act upon their own will and pray within the classroom. I think an adult, just as much as a child, if not more so, has the right to act upon their will and pray where they are.
Just real quick before you respond to that, we are going to read super chats in about 5 minutes, so keep getting them in. We'll get to the super chats and then we'll return to the debate.
Got it.
Cool. Okay. Keep going.
So, no, I wouldn't ban it, because in the hypothetical that you were presenting, everybody has already decided they want to do that of their own volition, of their own will, which they can act upon.
The majority comes together and says, we want to be able, in this school district, we want to be able to pray Christian prayers, and so that's totally fine with you.
They are able to. The difference is if the schools are imposing it upon the children.
Yeah, the school says, hey, this is what we're going to do every day. We're going to pray right after the national anthem every day.
Okay.
Right? It's been decided as a community that's what we're going to do.
Let me ask.
There could still be outliers every here and there.
Let me ask you then. Carry on, please.
Well, just if the rule is, okay, we're all going to pray, but there can be outliers, then we're not all going to pray. It means the people who want to pray are going to pray. So what's going to happen at the beginning of prayer time? Do we say, okay, everybody who wants to pray, stand up and pray? Well, no, I'm asking you about the hypothetical that you're presenting that you think would be reasonable. So this is why I have to ask you the questions. If there is this prayer hour in this district of schools, what is it? Everybody get up and pray unless you don't want to, in which case you can keep sitting. Is it everybody get up and pray, and then we expect those that don't want to separate themselves from the crowd? Are there going to be other ways that this prayer would be reinforced in school? Or is it basically just like we did with the Pledge of Allegiance, where you just say it once and then you sit down and you forget you did it until the next day?
Yeah, I'm a proponent for school choice. So I would say if a school district chooses, hey, we're going to pray after the national anthem. If you have a problem with that, you can take your child.
Right. Well, I'm asking you. Right, but I'm asking you about the specifics, that specific school or that specific district, not about whether they can leave the school and district, but how it would be implemented within that district.
That's how it's implemented. Hey, this is just what we're going to do every morning.
Okay, I gotta ask. It's bugging me. I'm gonna go crazy. Abby, what happens if a child within one of those schools that have decided we're going to implement school prayer, mandatory school prayer, that child says, no, I don't want to pray? What happens to that child?
That child's parents, no, of course not.
So the school does not punish that child in any way.
Children. No, it's not about.
Well, I guess it also depends how you would define punishment. If every single person, as it's like in the classroom,
and it would depend on how you define punishment.
Yes, if every single person in the classroom except for one was going off and doing something as a group, and that one child was forced to sit out because they just didn't have the same belief system, then that could be seen as punishment from that child that's experiencing a level of social alienation from their classmates simply because they don't have the same religious values.
Which is why I believe school choice is so important.
So you think the only way for that child, again, this is also why I said children can only act upon their wills so much. Children have autonomy stripped from them in most ways. This would be one of those ways. You think a child gets to decide what school they go to, or is it really their parents that get to choose for them?
Well, but in that scenario, if we're talking about, I mean, I guess we'd have to define child too. Are we talking about a teenager that has some
Talking
type
about somebody under
of
18.
autonomy and thought? If we're talking
Talking
about
about
like a
somebody under
5-year-old,
18.
because if a 5-year-old goes, no, I'm not going to pray, typically that's because their parents had raised them in a different religion or something like that, or raised them to not be religious or to be vehemently against prayer. If we're talking about a teenager that's now, decided, then they have the right to stand down, and I don't see how a teenager removing themselves would be harmful,
Well, like I
right?
said, okay,
Standing
so
on their
two
values, but I also believe that that
two
child,
points.
don't you think that child deserves to be surrounded with people that share their values instead of one outlier in a school district of a majority? Do you think the majority should be punished for one?
I mean, again, like I said, I think the individual children all have a right to pray of their own volition. And because of that, they would not be punished just because there isn't a district level implementation of prayer time. They would still be allowed to pray if they so choose. It would not be implemented on a district level and therefore would not push the singular child that does not share these religious beliefs to into social alienation. I understand you keep leaning on this concept of, school choice, but again, like this child cannot just go to another school. You live in a district for that's a reason they're called a district. There are certain lines drawn on the map, and they say kids in this area go to this school, kids in that area go to that school. To go to a school that's not in your area requires, a different schedule. Your parents have to drive you somewhere else. It probably costs more if you're in a certain. Some states have magnet schools where you're basically paying to go to a school. I mean, I don't know about all the rules about magnet schools, but the one that I went to for 1 year, um, you could. It was kind of like half private school. You were basically going to a school that was outside of your district. Um, but how many of those decisions can a child make for themselves?
So we're
Probably
talking
none of
about,
them.
so I was saying in the context of school choice, right? That would be in the context of being able to implement school choice, because I don't think you could implement, um, you know, mandatory, like, hey, this is what we're going to do in this district if people didn't have the choice to leave. I think a big proponent of Christianity is respecting people's free will, It's telling them, hey, this is what I think.
Not
I don't think you should do that, but,
respecting
you're
free
going to
will,
make your
like
own
respecting
choices.
the free will to choose whether or not they would be praying in a classroom instead of implementing
Right,
it
so
on a
they
district
are more
level.
than welcome to choose to take their child to a different school in the area, a different school district. That's why school choice
So,
would be
Okay.
important.
but again, okay,
No, finish your point, but then we do have to. I do have to make some money, so I
I
do have to get
it's
to
just
the next.
important to remember changing districts isn't as simple as saying, "Ah, we're going to go somewhere else." It requires a change in your schedule. It requires a change in your child's schedule, a change in the parent's schedule. It requires, if you're out of the district, you probably don't get access to the same school buses. So you probably have to now drive your kid to school or, talk to the district themselves, see if you're close enough. Like there's a lot of just finagling you'd have to do
So you
on the
think
schedule
that
aspect. You'd be
because of
pulling the kids
inconvenience
if
for the
you'd be
parent,
pulling the
the
kids.
child,
Whoa, whoa,
the
whoa! Let
parent
me
should
finish.
allow the
If you let
child
me
to
finish
suffer?
speaking, you'll understand my point. When it comes to this, these parents are pulled away from work. If parents are already working earlier than their kid goes to school, or parents have a job that doesn't allow them to drop off their kid, that school bus is necessary. The same goes for picking up their kids. There's a lot of money that goes into moving to another district. You'd have to move your house. You'd have to pay for the hours lost when you had to go pick up your child or drive them to school. You'd have to pay for the transportation. You'd have to pay for the new books or the new materials necessary for this new school. And your child would have to pay because they're being pulled away from all of their friends simply because the district is forcing every child in that area to pray at a certain hour without respecting the freedom of that
Okay,
individual child.
respond, and then I'm absolutely gonna do super chats. So respond, then super chats. Okay, go.
So you're basically saying that the needs of this one child, although the majority in the community have all agreed and have all decided that this is the way their community wants to operate, that this is what they've all agreed on, and that we're going to operate
they can do
this
without
way.
district
No, if you'll let me
implementation.
finish, you were just very adamant about letting you finish. So now, if you'll let me finish, so you're talking about, these parents would be so inconvenienced and all of these other things, but if they feel so strongly about it, wouldn't the inconvenience be worth it? Shouldn't they be fending for themselves? Or you're saying that the majority should have their agreed upon rights taken for this one child and this one family, that determines it's not that they don't want to participate in what the society and the majority has chosen for them?
I think parents like paying rent.
Okay.
Super chats.
Yes, super chats. We have to get to them. I have to make my money, right? That filthy lucre, if you will. Okay, here we go. $5 from Testicle Johnson. Thank you for the $5. Only rich white landowners who are men should be allowed to vote. After all, that's what America was founded on. Thank you for the $5. $5 from Zephyr Hash. Thank you for the $5. We need to revert back to the original 13 colonies. That was what America was founded on. We're going to have a lot of these, apparently. Thank you for the $5. $10 from Psychonaut. Doesn't divine command allow for slavery? Would you be okay with that? Okay.
Slavery is mentioned, just to answer that. Slavery is mentioned in the Old Testament, but Jesus came to fulfill the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, he preached love and forgiveness and redemption.
Yeah.
So, no, it's not a proponent of Christianity, though it is mentioned in the Old Testament.
Noted. $5 from Testicle Johnson. Originally, enslaved people were counted as 3/5 of a person for taxation and representation. That was what America was founded on. $5 more from Testicle Johnson. Fugitive Slave Clause, Article 4, Section 2, required escaped enslaved people to be returned. Thank you for the $5. $2 from Zephyr Hash. Is it okay if gay twins love each other in the rear? Okay. $5 from Zach. Abby.
You believe in freedom. Sorry.
Abby, you've never answered Wick's question of what changes you're advocating for. What are they specifically? I think we have gotten to a couple now.
We got there.
Yeah,
we'll
get to there more, though. But don't worry. Thank you for the $5. $2 from Testicle Johnson. Pass on the child grape syndicate being in charge. $2 more from Testicle Johnson. People on the Mayflower were illegal immigrants. $5 from Zephyr Hash. Can she name one holy Christian value that America has adopted that no non-Christian country has adopted? And how has that value affected America? It's a good question. You can answer if you like.
Great question.
Well, I'd say Christian values started long before America did, so that wouldn't be. We would have to look at countries that were founded after America, not necessarily.
So China, for
you know
example,
what I mean?
or there's a lot
China's
of
not
African
Christian.
countries. Yeah, that's the point, right?
Yes, I think that is a point.
He's asking what Christian value that America has adopted that no non-Christian country has adopted. Like China does have, again, at least on paper, a judicial system that claims to value fairness, and it is not a Christian nation.
It doesn't, though. It claims to value fairness, but we all know it doesn't. We know that.
I mean, if you ask me, neither does America.
I would argue that
neither has America, because it was founded upon. It was founded by a bunch of men who owned slaves. I wouldn't consider that justice in any regard. So if we're talking about what is real justice and what is fake justice, I would say we haven't seen real justice.
Okay, we still got some more.
We don't currently have slaves, so I don't know what you would talk about with we haven't seen real justice, but okay.
The foundation of America is what I was talking about, the basis of your argument.
Let's keep going. $2 from Zach. Abers, define Christian nationalism.
Define Christian nationalism.
Yep, I asked you to do that at the beginning. I think you did, so just reiterate it.
Yeah. I would say Christian nationalism would be a return to the Christian roots of America that they were founded on.
Okay.
And treating each other equally, justice equally for the rich and for the poor. The freedom of speech, I believe, is fundamentally Christian, because it's the idea that the reason you're free to speak and no man can take your speech from you, no government can, is because it was given to you by a higher power, your ideas and your thoughts.
Okay. $10 from Separate Hash. Sounds like she is admitting Christians don't respect other religions. As other religions grow, mutual respect decreases. But every non-Christian respects the Christians. So what's the gap here? Thank you for the $10. $5 from Infallible Fowl. The problem I have with this is that Christianity is based off willingness to obey God's values, so putting them into law doesn't feel very Christian. Thank you for the $5. $5 more from Separate Hash. Wick, how would she enforce and ensure that Christian values are followed by society? If she has no will to enforce her rules, then why is she here? Then finally, $20 from Ben Riley. Taxes have existed for a long time. Even Jesus said to pay taxes. Also, saying that the state should stay out of marriage, yet should not have monetary policy penalizing people who don't have Christian values, is incoherent. Church emoji, money emoji. Thank you for the $20. I appreciate you. And with that, that's the super chats. But yes, I guess to re-get us back on track, to restart the debate, right? Enforcement mechanisms. Somewhat again, like if someone does not want to live by the Christian, if someone would you allow states, because states still do have constitutions, right? That hasn't gone away. Would you allow states to become Muslim in their constitution?
I don't think
Say a bunch of Muslims moved to Michigan, and they were like, you know what? Almost everyone here is now Muslim. There's a ton of us. We want to become a Muslim state. Would that be allowed under Christian nationalism? Why or why not?
no. No, and it's because the values aren't consistent with American values. That's kind of the maybe that's
What
the broader
values?
point I'm trying to make, is that America was founded on Christian values. So in order to found something within America that's not based on Christian values, say Sharia law, for instance, like a bunch of Muslims come together and they decide we're going to establish Sharia law, that it would be adversarial towards the rest of the nation.
What if instead of implementing Islam, you just implemented a non-religious state, an a-religious state?
I would say that we currently are a-religious at a national level. Are you saying, like,
On a state
hypothetically, the
level,
whole
because you're
nation is Christian, and at a state level, you've got one state that says we're going to be non-religious, we're going to be strictly
according
secular?
to you, the nation is already Christian, correct?
I said it's
So,
founded that way, and that we've been moving away from it since about the 50s.
okay, well then, if we have Christianity implemented at a national level, and we had a state that said, "Look, 65% of us aren't even Christian," we'd rather have a state constitution that reinforces our secular beliefs or lack thereof, really. Um,
I
would
think
that
the
be possible?
Constitution I think specifically prohibits that.
Prohibits what?
The the founding of a straight up, no, you cannot be religious. Like, hey, if you live here, you can't be religious.
How
The
does the
same way
Constitution? How does the Constitution not allow that?
it says it both ways. It says you can't tell people they must be religious, right? And you can't tell people they cannot be religious. It says it both directions.
Okay, but in a
That's
Christian nation,
true.
Fundamentally Christian, right?
mhm,
Christian values, based on Christian values. That's not saying that everyone has to be Christian or else. That's saying you need to exemplify Christian values and melt into American culture instead of being adversarial towards American culture. If you exemplify values that are adversarial towards American culture, you should just not be in America. You should go somewhere where they have your values. There are plenty of nations that do.
what value? Um, so
Canada's mostly secular.
in In a Christian nation, would non-Christians be afforded the same constitutional rights as Christians?
Well, all humans are going to be afforded the same constitutional rights because they're given to you by a creator, not by the government.
The constitutional rights are given to you by God.
That's the idea, is that the government can't take away your rights. They can't give them to you. They've solidified them in stone, and that people can't violate your rights. Those rights are given to you by your creator. You have the right to defend yourself, right? You have the right to, that's what the ultimate thing is. Yes, you have a right to own a gun, but it's more about the right to defend yourself against tyranny, against governmental tyranny.
Uh-oh. Did she freeze again? Oh, no, she's still here.
I didn't.
Okay, go ahead.
My eyes were just closed for a minute. Okay. Okay. So the Constitution was written by men, correct? It wasn't written by God or by somebody speaking on behalf
It
of
was
God.
written by I want to say 55 of 56 were at the very least deists and believed in a creator.
So they were men,
Of course.
not God.
No. No one
Do
would
you
ever make that
think
claim.
so? Well, girl, I'm asking you questions. So if the Constitution was written by
Not
men and not
true.
by
There's
God,
people who do make
then
this
are
claim,
constitutional rights given to you by men, by the state,
Hold
or
on.
by God?
The idea of constitutional rights and you not being able to violate those rights and the government not being able to take them from you is that they were bestowed upon you on God, that you have those rights, whether the government
So
exists or
they're
not. Do you have the right to free speech? Whether the
they are
government
natural
existed or
rights.
not, would you have the right to free speech? If the government wasn't there and someone came to you and tried to cover your mouth and make you not speak, would you have the right to defend yourself and say whatever you want to say?
or deport you,
I mean,
perhaps?
in this, yeah.
Well,
I mean,
you
in
know how I
this,
feel about that.
I don't, actually. Oh, well, actually, I do. Actually,
Yeah, we talked about it.
well, I mean, in this circumstance, I do see that like specific right as being legal, but so it seems like you're talking about natural rights, perhaps not just constitutional rights. Is that reasonable to assume? You know,
I'm
natural
saying,
rights that
yeah,
are
a
given
lot
to
of
you.
a lot of the rights that we have, the idea of those rights, not them putting them in paper and saying we're going to recognize these, because that's what they did. They said we're going to recognize these as rights, right? Not like these are your rights and they're your rights because we say so. Because if that was the case, they could take them away. They can't take those rights away.
Well,
They solidified them. The
they
specific ones.
definitely. I mean, they definitely can take rights away. They have them. They okay.
The government can't come to your
So
house and take your guns currently. They can't.
I mean, they literally they can. They literally could. If I had a gun and the government came and took it, they'd be taking it.
The reason they don't is because they've solidified, it's built into the structure of our government. That's what I'm telling you. Is yes, if the government said, here are your rights, we give these to you, the only reason they're there, that was the idea behind it, is the only reason they're there is because we give them to you. Then they could at any moment turn around and say, we take them from you. But that was the idea the founding fathers sat down with. We're going to solidify these, that they come from the creator. And so that the government, some random man, 500 years from now, can't say, no, you don't have that and just take it away. So that the people
Unless
can
you're a
rise
felon.
up. Free speech was meant to
Unless
curb
you,
that.
God, I wish we had a
deemed a
historian.
threat.
I have to say, I really wish we had a historian here. But
So, just to clarify, the government can take your guns away if you are deemed a threat to yourself or others. So, if they put you on suicide watch, things like that. They can also take it away if you're a felon, right? If you've committed a felony, you do lose access.
They
to
could
some of
also
your
just
rights.
revoke the right to bear arms. They could, like.
Yes, the government, if they wished, could make
all
an
of these
amendment to
rights
the Constitution
are
to amend the Second Amendment. That's possible.
All of these rights are
It's
reinforced by the governmental system. They are not reinforced by God, and because of that,
there's
they could revoke any of these rights that have been given to us.
that's what I'm saying. They're solidified, right? But they're recognizing those rights. They're not giving you the rights. They're recognizing that you have those rights already and that they're going to respect them. Those are two different things.
Right.
Giving you rights and respecting those rights are two entirely different things.
Okay. Um,
You need me to step in with some questions, or what do you want to do here, Buckaroo?
I'm a little off track of
I'm
where I thought
moderating. I
this
can't jump
conversation
in,
was going.
obviously, but I'm just trying to.
Um, so do you believe we should teach through example? Do we teach by, do as I say, not as I do? Or do we teach through
God, I want to jump in. I
providing
don't
an
want to do it
example
myself.
of behavior that should be mimicked, imitated?
I think you should do probably both. You shouldn't just act a certain way and expect others to follow you, right? You should kind of practice what you preach to a certain extent.
Right. So if you believe in religious freedom, in the freedom to exercise your religious beliefs as long as they aren't hurting anybody else, do you think you would be leading by example to impose your religious beliefs on others, or to force people into, self-imposed alienation, social alienation, because they do not adhere to the same religious system that you do?
You think people would be forced into social alienation, that people would just decide, "Hey, you can't speak ever again because you don't believe what we believe?" Because I personally
Do
don't
you
believe that's
remember
Christian value at all.
Do you remember the example that we covered earlier about a child that sits out from prayer time and possibly leaves their school district just because the district decided to implement prayer time?
So,
And if you do
here's
remember, I did refer to that directly as social alienation, because that is what it is at the end of the day. It is forcing a child to be alienated from their peers within a classroom because the district has chosen to implement religious practice for a religion that child does not
what do you think the
participate in.
odds would be of it being one child by themselves? Because that's what we're
I mean,
advocating in the scenario,
that's
because
not
I
really
was
what I'm
talking about a
asking.
majority, right? A majority of people came together. That would necessarily instate it's not just one child being socially isolated by themselves,
So you
but
think if it's two children being alienated, then it's
we also
fine? If
went
two
over that they
children
would have
are
absolutely
forced
the
out
right
of the
to go to
community?
school, and B, that children should be surrounded by
Again,
people that share
going
their
to
own
another school
values,
would
right?
be alienation if they are already in one school and that
That's not
school decides to
alienation.
implement prayer,
Alienation would
and
be
they have to leave that
excluding them
school
entirely.
and go to another school. That is alienating them from their social groups, because, as I think we all know,
About
children develop a lot of their friendships through school. That is one of the primary functions of school, is socialization, is children interacting with their peers.
And if you're talking about also, like, going back to the whole prayer time thing that you seem to be interested in, if we're talking about that, if a school district says, "Okay, we're gonna say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we're gonna have prayer time for an hour," I think that's what you said, like a prayer hour, right? Who's to say that children couldn't just sit quietly by themselves while the other children sit quietly and pray to whatever prayer they wanna pray? We're not talking about, like,
I mean, nobody said that they
forcing them
wouldn't be
to
able
say a
to.
prayer standing up out loud, right? That's not what
Nobody
we're talking
suggested that.
about. Right, we're not
No,
talking
that's not
about
what we're
all the
talking
children
about. So I'm
standing
glad
up and
we've
praying
covered
out loud.
that. You're bringing up something that we aren't talking about, so you can move on to what I
That's
did
my
ask.
whole thing. So why would the child be alienated entirely? In that scenario, the only way
I
a
mean,
child would get
personally,
alienated is they're standing up saying a prayer all at the same time, right? And a child would be noticeably removed from that scenario. But if they're all sitting quietly, no one's to say what's going on in any of those children's brains. But providing time for all children to pray in the morning, how is
Okay,
that?
hold
How's that
on. Let me
alienating a
ask.
child?
I have to ask. That's fair enough for some forms of Christian prayer, but when we talk about Catholicism, they do a lot of genuflecting. It's not just sitting there quietly. When we talk about Muslims praying, they do have their prayer mats and they do have their thing when it becomes much more noticeable. I guess the first question I would have for you is: would a Muslim school be allowed to implement and force Christian children to pray with them?
Not in what we're talking about here. We're talking about bringing back like more Christian
Okay,
values. I don't think Islam would be
Well,
included
that's
in
why he
that. I
asked
think
about if
Islam
it would
is
be in a Muslim
directly
school.
adversarial towards Christianity. So
so Muslim
I think
schools
that
would
would
not
be
be
a
allowed.
different I think that would be a different
Okay.
scenario
So
altogether.
let's stick to this. Under Christian and nationalism, you would ban Muslim schools.
Uh,
Because they don't align with Christian beliefs and they are adversarial, to quote you, to Christian beliefs.
I don't think private Muslim schools would be a problem. I think private institutions should be able to do what they want, but I think public Muslim schools would be a problem.
Why?
Because we're talking about having public values, a social cohesion,
Okay, but
right?
if the
So
public
So,
school happens, just
has
give me
a
a second.
prayer
Hold
hour
on, give me a second.
or prayer time.
Give me a second. Let me finish my thought, and then you can respond, please. So, if a public school wanted to implement that was in Dearborn, Michigan, for example, where a vast majority of the population is Muslim, right? They get together, they vote on it. They say, you know what? In this school, it's a public school, but most of us are Muslim. Like 90% of us are Muslim. We want to have our Muslim prayer time during our school, right? We want to implement that, and we want to make sure all the students participate. Would you be would you stop that from happening? Would you have the federal government come in and say, no, you cannot allow this?
I think they should lose funding. I don't think taxpayers should fund it if it's not in cohesion with
But
the
you would be
majority
okay
of
with
the
a
culture.
Christian
so
school who did that being publicly funded?
That's in the majority of the culture, right? That's a
Okay.
majority of people. 65% of the country is Christian. If they want to implement Christian values and say, hey, we're going to give a prayer hour where all children can sit quietly, you can pray, you can choose not to pray, but we're going to provide this hour for all children. If
so you
if
don't
a
believe that.
child is Muslim and they want to sit and pray to Allah during that time, I don't see why anyone would know that is what they were doing, why nor anyone would
They
care.
face east. They would know. They face east. They put a mat down and they touch their
Or they
forehead to
could
the
choose
ground.
not to participate,
Pretty.
right? Well, I mean, I know that, but they also pray at very specific times. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about implementing time to pray at a specific time period, right? The Muslim faith in
Like
general
Muslims
wouldn't
already do.
align with that. They pray at specific time periods, multiple times throughout the day, 5 times throughout the day,
They can't be
numerous
given
times.
5 times throughout the day to pray?
Yeah, if they want to go pray, then by all means, but it's not something we should implement at a social level because socially we should be implementing more of a Christian foundation in alignment with the majority of the American people.
So
As you
you
said,
think
for the people,
non.
by the people, right? You were
Mhm.
arguing for the people, by the people. So for the
So
people, by the people, they decide we are a Christian nation and we want to implement a Christian prayer
that's
time.
not exactly
Well, you
how
don't
I
have a
would.
problem with that because for the people, by the people.
I mean, I think for the people, by the people, which is why I personally respect the diversity of religious beliefs and, all other natures of variety that come in America, that exist in America. I actually think it's pretty lovely that we have protections for everybody to practice whatever religion they choose. I think that's an important constitutional right. And it sounds like what you just said, it would actually not be afforded to everybody equally. In this scenario, you would not be affording the same constitutional protections to the schools that choose to have Muslim prayer time as you would to Christian schools. And because of that, you would be offering like different rights based on their Christian status
It's not saying,
or
"No, you
non-Christian.
cannot," right? It's not telling someone, "No, you can't do this." It's providing a prayer time, whereas now we've removed that option. You can't do that even if you wanted to, right? If you wanted to say, hey, we want to provide all children with the opportunity to pray after the Pledge of Allegiance, you can't do that currently. Whereas I don't see
You
why that
literally can. Children literally can pray after the Pledge of Allegiance if they choose.
they
There's no,
can choose to, but they can't
I've never heard
provide
of a
time.
single school that's banned prayer
A school
on
can't
campus.
provide time for it. They can't.
I mean, how long are you taking to pray? Are you going to spend like 30 minutes in there?
I mean, you're the one talking about Islam.
Pray or get
A
back
lot
to
of
school.
their Islam can take some time to perform that prayer. They've got to wash their hands a specific way and make sure they're prepared to do that prayer. So, I mean, it
Something
can
tells
take
me
some
they know how to
time.
do that shit swift if they've done it enough. I do have to say, like, I doubt they're spending hours out of the day. No, that's why I said something tells me.
But if we provided time for everyone to pray equally, I don't see how that would be in any way, shape, or form a problem with the way America was founded. That used to be done, right? And if you didn't want to, you could just not. And I don't see how that's a problem. I don't see how you would even have a problem with that. It's not about
I didn't
excluding
say that I
someone.
have a problem. Well, I didn't say it was about excluding someone. I said it would. That would be the natural result of having a process that actively excludes people who do not agree with that belief system. So whether or not you intentionally want that.
It sounds like
How is
you're
it
actually okay with
excluding
it if it
Christians?
excludes Christians.
How is it
Because you don't
excluding
want
Christians
them.
if Christians are allowed, if everybody is allowed to pray? How is that excluding Christians by
You're
not
arguing that
forcing
you don't
everybody to
want
pray?
everyone to be allowed to pray, right? That everyone should be able, if
No,
you
I
choose
never
to, then
said
that's on you.
I
So that
never
means
said that nobody's
if
allowed to
every
pray. In
child
fact, I
determines they
said
want a different
One
time to
time.
pray, should a teacher allow that person? Every kid can just go pray whenever they want, all throughout the day. It doesn't matter. They can all pick their own time. They can all have their own little religion, and you just got kids coming and going all day long, coming out of the classroom, leaving the classroom. You think that's fine, instead of
I
just
mean, if it's
designating, hey,
necessary for
here's
them,
time for everyone to pray.
if it's necessary for them to practice their religion, to leave for like a cumulative like 12 minutes out of the day, out of the class to go pray, then yeah, I would allow it. I don't think
But what
that's
if every
actually that big of a
student
deal.
But what if every student decided that according to their religion, they have to pray at a different time? So
Every
every
student
10 minutes,
already goes to the bathroom at a different
so
time, and
every
we allow
10 minutes
that.
or
We can't
20
allow
minutes,
students to pray in the bathroom if they want. We can't allow the students to choose to go to the
you don't
bathroom or
think that
choose to
would
go to the
cause
prayer
an
room.
inherent disruption? You don't think that would cause a disruption to the majority of the other students in the classroom, that
As
someone's
much
coming and
disruption as
going?
going to the bathroom, as much disruption as admin coming in, as much disruption as substitute teachers or other students coming in, as much disruption as having to send students out of the classroom, as much disruption as para-educators entering the classroom. I mean, disruption happens. I think if you're saying this one form of disruption shouldn't be allowed because there might be people who are praying in a way that doesn't align with Christianity, and instead we should just put all the Christian prayers in one time. Like I just think that's like it's a silly argument against not against allowing children to pray.
So your argument is to accommodate everyone's preferences and darn the majority. Just darn the
No,
majority,
my
doesn't
argument
matter.
was
Just
that
make
was
sure we accommodate everybody.
that was not actually the main argument that I posed. You asked me a question as to whether I would do that versus forcing an hour of prayer for the whole district, which I said, yes, I would prefer that to having an hour of prayer time for the whole district.
We're circling a little bit, so let me get some more super chats in here, and then
Can I just say, can I just please read this? I actually liked this one thing. Liberty of conscience. The liberty of conscience establishes a natural right that the government cannot directly control your belief system. I just want to say that it influenced the writing of the Constitution strongly.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to say.
Cool. $2 from Fire Child.
I'm glad you looked that up.
Yeah, it just so happens that every fucking thing I read, it just so happens that nearly everything I read is something I looked up. That's how research works.
Okay. $2 from Firechild. I want my own satanic state. Thank you for the $2.
Hell yeah! Let's go!
$5 more from Firechild.
Sorry.
And so you would do what to people like me? Those are the pagan persuasion. What would happen to pagans under Christian nationalism?
Pagan persuasion.
It's a question to you.
I don't think anything happens to pagans. I think pagans. I'm sure pagans
Something did at
pray
one
as
point.
well. They're more than welcome if we implement a national, like a prayer time after class or whatever. They're more than welcome to pray to whatever god they wish
So they could
individually.
pray to Satan?
If that's the route they choose, God gave them free will.
Okay.
It's sad, disappointing, but is what it is.
Paganism is sad. You love Christmas trees, don't you?
Let me get through my super chats and we'll get to it. I promise. $5 from Ben Riley. The Constitution doesn't mention a creator or God. Also, Russia is a Christian nationalist state. So should America be more like Russia?
The Declaration of Independence does mention God or a creator, and it mentions it about 4 or 5 times, and it came first. It's actually how we declared independence. So that's more about
and then we wrote a constitution upon which
we wrote
a constitution upon which we wanted to actually base all of our laws, right?
And a lot of it is based and rooted in Christian
one was like,
values.
we're not a part of you anymore, and the other one was like, okay, now we actually want to set up a system of governance, and because of that we would like to establish rules that we follow to, or rights specifically that we use, that we implement rules around and reinforcing
that they recognize were given to you by your creator.
My creator was my mom.
Okay. Thank you for the membership.
She literally.
Okay, I get it. Let's get to the super chats, please. I need to make a little money. So for Firechild, membership for 12 months. Damn. And tier 2 as well. Oh, 15 months. Sorry, I read that wrong. My bad. I didn't mean to sell you short, Firechild. Look at you go. Why is it so necessary that a publicly funded school be Christian? Just go to private school. Quote, make no law respecting the establishment of religion, end quote. Thank you for the membership for 15 months. That's beautiful. $20 from Ben Riley. Jesus emphasized the separation of church and state with the quote, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and God the things that are God's, from Matthew 22, verse 21. Be like Jesus and keep church and the state separate. Thank you for the $20. $5 from Zephyr Hash. God damn it. I was typing out the Muslim school question, but I have the money. Thank you for the $5. $2 from Firechild to fund the Christian schools. $5 from Testicle Johnson. Jesus was a homosexual. He came in Jesus' ass and didn't call him back. That's why he sold him out. It's in the footnotes of the Bible. And thank you for the $5. So, yes, there are multiple verses, and this is to Abby, and then we'll get back to the questions, right? There are multiple verses in the Bible where Jesus, again, refuses to establish a kingdom on earth. So, for example, in John 18, verse 36, he says this, Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place. So the question is, Jesus, at least from the Bible and from my understanding of it, kind of refused to establish a nation. Why is it that Christians today, in your opinion, should establish a nation when Jesus would not?
Once again, it's about the Christian values that are taught, not about establishing Christianity itself, not about saying everyone must be Christian. That's not a claim that I've made. What I've made is that we should inherently value the morals that Christianity sets forth. A lot of those things are love your neighbor, right? Love your neighbor is an inherently Christian value. So that's definitely what the nation should be built on, that we should love and care for one another, that we should all willingly love and care for one another, not forcibly love and care for one another. Those values is what it should be based on.
Is it willingly if you're being directed by God and being threatened with eternal damnation if you don't? Is that really
You
will?
have free will. You can choose eternal damnation if that's what you want to choose. You have the free will to do that, and that's why love exists. Without free will, love cannot exist. Without free will, it's just control. And love can't exist with control. You can't force someone to love you,
Just like you can't force somebody to believe in a God.
which is why we
Um,
shouldn't try, right? I've not claimed that to force people to believe in Christianity. It's more to perpetuate Christian values, build a culture based on Christian values, and others that wish to participate in that don't want to be Christian. That's good for them. But the values set forth should be Christian. We should incentivize Christian values, not necessarily equate to punishing those who don't have them.
so we shouldn't outlaw things that are inherently antagonistic to Christianity.
Can you give us a
What do you mean
Buckaroo?
by
Yeah, can you give us an
antagonistic?
example of what you mean?
Sure. Let's say somebody from the Satanic Temple is on the street proselytizing to everybody about choosing Satanism over Christianity. I would say that's antagonistic to Christianity. Would you say that is illegal?
No, they should have the absolute right to do that.
Are there things like tattoos, like mixed wearing mixed fibers? Are there certain things that you think, you know, should be implemented, or are there specific Christian values that you think are more important to reinforce than others?
I think I think there are inherent teachings, so that specifically loving your neighbor, the like the 10 commandments for the most part, murder, things that we've all agreed on, they're biblical values, and then we've taken those biblical values and we've put them into our laws. Okay, these are things are wrong,
So we
right?
don't really need it. So we don't really need it to implement these values since they are already implemented in law, like
I
you
said
said.
we should incentivize them. That's always been my claim. We should
I mean, is it not an
incentivize
incentive not to
being
kill
kind.
people if you're threatening to put them in jail if they do?
That's not what we're talking about when it comes to incentivization. That's already a law. That's already illegal. I'm talking
True,
about
it is.
adding in
That's why we don't need
adding in
anything else.
incentives
It's
to
already
push
illegal.
more towards other Christian values that we're not implementing at the moment. See, murder is one of those things we already implement. I'm talking more so about family values. What we've been championing since the 2000s,
Mm.
really since the sexual revolution, is you don't need a man, men don't need women, and women don't need men. And you can do it all on your own, and you should chase a career, and you should give your youth to the corporate monster that's going to control that youth. And then, when you're in your late 30s and you look around and you're not married and you have a fantastic career, is the materialism enough for you? America has moved much more towards materialism and away from sentimentalism or taking care of your family or really driving
Jesus
family values.
Jesus is anti-girl bossery. I understand. He hates slaying. I get it. He could never slay. Nowhere near as much as Beyonce or Kamala. I understand. Okay, Jesus couldn't slay. Uh, he would never wear a pantsuit. Um, I guess. I find a lot of your answers to be a bit lackluster. It sounds like you've got one idea as to what we should do to incentivize Christian values, which is just a tax credit for kids. Is there anything else? Because all of this so far, it's just vibes. It's yeah, we should have more kids. We should encourage people to have kids. We should let people pray in school. Like, is there more to it? Is it really just is a tax credit all we need to have a Christian nationalist state?
No, it's all about what we're championing, right? If you're
Well,
championing.
championing, I understand you're saying championing, but again, this is like this is a vacuous statement. This doesn't actually explain, the practical measures that you would take or the practical measures that we would see in a Christian nationalist state. So I would like to hear more firm statements on what would be a Christian nation
May I
past
ask?
just
Yeah.
I also Yeah, go
Yeah,
for it.
just may I ask, maybe to help the conversation along, can you give us an example of a Christian nationalist that you think you would advocate for us to research or follow? Who is a representative of a Christian nationalist today that you think is a good example of what you would like a Christian nationalist state to look like?
I think I tend to lean more into populism, which is more, I think, where my personal views are lining out, which is kind of why there's a confusion between the Christian nationalism
Okay,
thought, right? Because I'm talking more populism,
sure,
because
but
that's my
I
own
don't mean
personal belief.
I don't mean to say I don't mean to restrict your answer to like a politician. It could be a thought leader, someone who has done speeches, things like that, who is advocating that you would say today, like, hey, that guy has some, or girl perhaps, has some great ideas about what I would like to see as Christian nationalism. Do you have a name?
I don't agree with necessarily everything, every single thing this person says, but I think Andrew Wilson has some really good ideas.
Okay. What would you consider a good idea from Andrew Wilson?
I'm so
I
sorry.
think
I'm taking you serious. I'm so sorry. I was just surprised to hear his name. That's all.
Because
I
Andrew Wilson
think
has advocated, I'll just tell you some of the things he's advocated for, or at least that I've heard him advocate for, and you're probably more familiar with him, so maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't watch his stuff. I only see clips. I've only talked to him a couple times. But as I understand it, he is advocating for repealing the 19th Amendment. Would you be advocating for that as well?
so. This is probably one of my hotter takes, but I personally would be totally fine with not having the right to vote.
Okay, but you would advocate that to, so in other
I
words,
think if
you're
you're not
advocating
willing, I think if you're not willing to sign up for
for
the
the
draft,
repeal of the 19th.
that's one idea that I agree with. If you're not willing to sign up for the draft, you shouldn't have the right to vote. Now, where I would put that in place is if there are women that choose to sign up for the draft, then they should have the right to vote.
Okay.
Do you think people should have to sign up for the draft in the first place?
Well, if we're going to do away with it altogether, that would be a whole different scenario, which
If
isn't
we
what
were
we're
to do
talking
away with
about.
it, would people
I
get the
don't
right
think
to
we
vote?
should do away with the draft. I think you have a duty as a young man to protect your country if it's inherently in danger.
If we were to do away with it, is there some other mechanism that you would see fit to allow a citizen the right to vote?
I think if we did away with the draft, then everyone should have the right to vote. If we did away with the draft, you would have an argument where both men and women would be equal as far as rights to vote, they'd be equally inclined, but doing away with the draft, I don't think would be a great idea anyway.
Okay, just to be clear, just so everyone knows, right? So in under your system, what you think would be a Christian nation, women inherently wouldn't have the right to vote. They would have to be sign up for the draft like a man does in order to have the right to vote. However, a man, right, would have an inherent right to vote. Is that
Well, he has
correct?
to sign up for the draft. Men are required to sign up for the draft. Upon signing up
Which
for the
would
draft, you have the
functionally
right to
mean
vote.
that men are inherently given the right to vote and women are not.
Well, if you're not willing to sign up for the draft, even as a woman, then I don't think you should have the right to vote. You're voting to send other people to fight for you with no expectation of having to go put your own life on the line. So you're okay with sending someone
Do
else
women
to
not put their
fight
life on the
for
line every single time they get
you're
pregnant and carry a
okay with
child to term,
voting.
considering the like insane maternal rate of pregnancy for like most of human life? Like most of human
But
history
that's
includes
not where
a
we are
pretty
now.
high maternal death rate because
It's a pretty
that's
low
not where we're
maternal
at.
death rate now due to technology. It's pretty low in comparison to where it was.
Mm, mm.
Is that the only I Buckaroo? Do you have any other problems with her take on the 19th Amendment repeal?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a part of the culture, you're already giving to society if you are participating with it. If you're, especially if you're a part of the workforce, I think it's ridiculous to me to say that some people should have their right to vote revoked just because they aren't signing up for the draft, something that men are required to do.
I would
Um,
argue that women were actually better off before they had the right to vote. That giving women the right to vote and forcing them into um, cor- corporate overlords and essentially forcing them is why you can no longer sustain a family on one income.
I mean, I don't think that's why we can't support a family on one income. I think there are a lot of different factors that go into that aren't just about giving women the right to vote. I think giving women the ability to have control over the I think giving women the power to have some control over the legislation that affects them equally, almost just as much as it does men, because women do exist within society and do participate in society, and therefore are experiencing the legislation that affects society, then so I lost my point. I got so excited about saying society in a funny voice. What was your question?
Yeah, you threw me way off. I was trying to figure out where you were going with that, but it wasn't going a whole lot anywhere. I said I would argue that women actually had more moral worth too. They had a much higher stake in the moral conversation because you couldn't buy their votes. You couldn't offer them things to get their votes, right? It was more they had more of a stance.
Men were immoral. Men were willing to sell their vote because they're fucking unprincipled scum, and women weren't. And you're telling me that makes
that's not
any man that sells his vote is an unprincipled bitch, and that's true for anybody who sells their vote. Okay,
lobbyists.
No, you're telling me women were inherently more moral because they were not given the opportunity to be.
I think people
be unprincipled scum.
Yeah,
people listen to you more when your rights are revoked. That's just objectively false. People don't listen to you. Your vote is your way of communicating to legislation and to the nation, to the government, what you want. That is your voice
with no
when it comes to the government.
Contribution whatsoever. So
no contribution. Fucking every single person in America came from a woman. No contribution.
You can let me finish. Hold on. You can let me finish my point. I would argue that women don't have to sign up for the draft. They don't have to be under the threat that someone could threaten our nation, and they would have to put their lives on the line.
When was the last time people were drafted?
It doesn't matter. Could they be drafted tomorrow?
When was the last time people were drafted? Answer my question, girl.
When was the last time people were drafted?
When was the last time a woman gave birth? Literally seconds ago. When was the last time men were drafted?
So would you say that women have a right to give birth then?
When was
men
the
have
last
the right
time?
to be drafted, right? They're getting drafted, so men have to be drafted.
When was the last time men were drafted?
That women have to give birth against their will? Is that what you're saying?
When? Sweetheart,
answer my question.
When
you keep trying to
you answered me. When was the last time men were drafted? You're acting like this is you expressed that there was some looming.
Once because you expressed. I'm asking you to answer my question.
You expressed that there was a looming fear amongst, like, on the heads of every man because they had to sign up for the draft. So I asked you, when was the last time people were drafted? Because if you don't understand,
women have to give birth. So are you arguing that women have a right? They have to give birth against their will?
Having a right to do something doesn't mean that you're forced to do it against your will. Men have a right to vote. You're not forced to vote against your will.
Men are drafted against their will. You were comparing childbirth to being drafted. So men are drafted against their will. Are you saying that women have to give birth to children against their will, or that they have a right to do so?
Couple things. Okay,
nobody has a right to do something against their will.
We had
literally have a. That's not
I
right.
I was confused with your point. I don't know how you could compare childbirth to being drafted. That was your
Hold on, please. We had a little bit of an internet kerfuffle on my end. I apologize to my audience if you just refresh if you want. Okay.
I have to use the restroom.
Okay. While you use the restroom, I have some questions for Abby. Okay, Abby.
Yep.
A man who is ineligible for the draft, so say they got bone spurs, or say that they have some other condition which forbids them from being able to serve in a draft, so they can't sign up for a draft. They're literally unable. Should they have the right to vote?
Well, if you're saying it's through no fault of their own, they'd be willing to. They sign up for the draft, and someone tells them, "Hey, you can't because you have bone spurs,"
or what have you.
Yeah. In that scenario, yes. If you've got a disability that prevents you, but you're more than willing, I think you should still have the right to vote. You're willing to sign up for the draft. You would if you could. You have a disability preventing you from doing so.
Okay.
Same thing with women. if a woman wants to, and they say, she goes, "Hey, I'll sign up for the draft in order to have the right to vote. I will sign up for the draft." And they say, "Hey, you can't. You have, some disease, some rare genetic condition or something like that." Then I think that woman should also have the right to vote.
I guess simply, should women be subject, since women who do not have the right to vote because they don't sign up for the draft, should they be subject to the laws of the state?
Well, yeah, I mean, you live in the laws of the state, right?
But they aren't able to have a voice in the laws of the state is what I'm getting at. So, for
well,
example,
I mean, neither do fugitives.
quick, right? If I may finish real quick. Yeah, but fugitives have committed a crime or done something wrong, in which case that they have lost the rights that we have given them, right? It was because of an action that they took by breaking the law. Last I checked, it's not illegal to be a woman.
But we still don't completely just remove them to a desert island somewhere.
Well, an island of women in the desert would be interesting, but not the point of the debate. My point of making this statement is that I feel that people who are subject to the laws of a land on which they are citizens, which women are citizens, right? That they should be afforded a say in those laws. And the way we do that in America, as outlined in the Constitution through the amendments, is through the voting system, a representative democracy. And I think that to withhold the right to have a say in the laws which govern you is fundamentally immoral and fundamentally, I would argue, unchristian. Go ahead.
You would think that, so you would argue that women had no say in anything before they had the right to vote?
They did not have the same level of say that people who could vote do.
How did they pass the right to vote?
They protested and they firebombed things, and there's a few other things. And men voted for their right. But I think that withholding their right in the first place was a moral stain on our nation. Though I will give you this argument, and this is the one argument I will give you, Abby, that before women got to the right to vote, there were no cities destroyed by nuclear fire. But after women got the right to vote, we've had a few. So, okay, that's just a little meme. But welcome back, Buckaroo. Here we
The other thing that I would say is, so men voted for women to have rights. If men hadn't decided for women to have rights, could women have done anything about it?
Given enough time, absolutely they could. Yes.
You think that? Do you think women could have monopolized force against men in order to force men?
Depends on when in the technology world. Today, yes. I hate to tell you, but we have wimpy little guys, wimpy little girls, able to drop bombs and blow up people from thousands of miles away, right?
I mean, even my mom was in the 80s. Even my mom was in the aviation ordnance. Like she worked with bombs like decades ago.
So who makes the majority of the technology though? Men or women? Majority in STEM fields, is it men or women?
Who does or who could?
Who currently? We're talking about reality, right?
Sure. So well, I think
if men tomorrow, all men woke up and they decided that women weren't going to have rights. They woke up and they said, "That's it. No more rights for women. It's over." What could women do about it?
They could do a lot.
They could do a lot
of harm, of physical violence.
There's a certain cookbook that I think every woman could easily access to allow them to do harm.
Men would not.
For example.
Men, in that scenario, in that hypothetical, if men woke up tomorrow and decided all women were not going to have the right to vote, and it came down to force, there's not a world in which women would monopolize men in force. Men are substantially stronger than women.
Well, how much?
That's assuming we're only doing. That's assuming also that we're all just doing hand-on-hand combat, which is not what the majority of
Where's the
war
tech going to come from?
You think any war
is going to make it for us and hand it to us and be like, "Here you go."
I mean, it already exists.
We made this new cool thing that we can, force you guys into baby.
The technology already exists. The technology already exists. Theft is not a manly task.
You think so? There's lots of women just right now. If men woke up tomorrow and just decided that's it, all the women are done. there's enough women in positions that would be able to get their hands on technology, or do you
Yes.
think where all of those
Yes.
technologies are, they're mostly monopolized by men? Those industries are also monopolized by
Here,
men.
I'll tell you how women would do it. Hey, I'll send you a nude if you give me your gun, and boom, that's
That would
it.
be how
That's it. They would
That's
win.
how it would be.
Let's deal with reality.
Psychological
They would
warfare, I'll
win.
give you that.
Are you
Women
kidding
would
me?
absolutely
Women would
win in
run us
psychological
over.
warfare.
We would be destroyed, and
I'll
we
give you
would
that.
ask for more. Honestly, a lot of these men would, right? But this idea that it would come into like a physical conflict. Obviously, if we were going to have a fist fight, I would beat you both up. That's just true, right? But if we're talking actual combat where you have force multipliers such as weaponry, such as technology, no, the
Funny you think
gender
you wouldn't be
of
driving a
the
tank in this
the
fight.
gender of the participant has far less of a factor than it would in a fist fight. But we are getting a little off topic. We are running to the end of time, but because I do have some things I need to do tonight, so we can't go too much longer.
That's right.
But I do want to give each of you a chance to have closing statements, closing thoughts. But before we do, Abby, if you want to come on next week, Tuesday, I'd love to have a one-on-one with you, and we can discuss these in more robust kind of way. But we'll do that. If you want, I'll DM you. Gang, what do we got coming up? Monday, I'm having Pisco on and Nina, and they're going to be fighting with Pentuple and Gibbs about the AutoPen incident, right? The accusations made. It should be fun. I'll be Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, we're going to have the soy pill on. We're going to have a few others on. And we're talking about Democrats, okay? And that's going to be a theme for next week, okay? Because Thursday, we're going to have Claire Lamont, the founder of Quillette. She's coming on my show. Elon Musk called her an asshole. That was fun. We're going to have Tracing Woodgrains. We're going to have Not So Erudite. We're going to have Eucharist. And maybe a couple more.
That's going to be a good one.
We're going to be talking about how Democrats can win, how we can change change it up and stop losing. that will be the discussion. So it should be a fun show next week. Tune in. But I want to give each of these lovely people, lovely guests, and thank you for spending your time with me tonight. A chance to shout themselves out and give their closing statements. Okay, we're going to start with Buckaroo. Give us your thoughts. Tell us where we can find you. And yeah, go ahead.
I'm Big Papa Buckaroo. You can find me on Blue Sky and X, Twitter, and YouTube soon. Well, the account's there. You'll see actual content soon. I just want to say, as a woman with the right to vote and to practice whatever religion I choose, the mission of the Satanic Temple is to encourage benevolence and empathy, reject tyrannical authority, advocate practical common sense, oppose injustice, and undertake noble pursuits. And the final tenet number 7 of the Satanic Temple: every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. I don't need a big old book to tell me what to do, because I have an internal moral system and I have principles. I am very glad that my nation does not force me into any belief system, because they can't control my thoughts. They can't control my beliefs. That is a natural right given to me by no one. That's all.
Okay. Gang, there's links to her content in her channel in my YouTube description. If you want to click on that, you want to find her. Thank her. Go and subscribe to her channel and thank her for spending her time, even through the tech issues, right, on my show. So I appreciate you for being here. Next up, Abby. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Abers. You can find me on X at Abers09. You can find me on Twitch at Abers Unleashed. And, in my ending statement, I think that we should return culturally to a Christian set of values. We should champion those values both in our media and in the way we conduct ourselves and in the way we treat one another. So with that, if you choose demons, I'll pray for you. Sounds like you need it. And your internal moral system you talk about is called the Holy Spirit. You should take a look into it.
Doesn't exist. Thank you, though.
Okay. Well, with that, her link to her Twitch channel is in my YouTube
To
description.
Abby's. To Abby's.
Yeah. Let me finish here.
Sorry,
Right?
I interrupted.
Yeah. The link to Abby's channel is in my YouTube description. Thank her for spending her time with us. Go and give her a follow or a sub or whatever it is that you wish to give her. And gang, with that, we're going to say goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Wave your hands.